Well, I really don't think there has been a government as full of itself as this Albanese Labor government. They love big, sweeping statements, they tell mistruths and they claim credit for simply everything. And like the member for Robertson today, I want to talk about two of his claims. Firstly, that their government is making a fairer education system from early childhood education right through to university. Sure, well, if you live in a metro area, but I've been travelling the country speaking with families in regional and rural areas, and as my colleagues here in the chamber can attest, the member for Braddon, the member for Grey, that rural and remote communities basically are not getting what they need. And there is nothing fair about how this government is treating those communities. Does the member opposite think that it's fair that the rural community of Kingston, SE, is still waiting for the $1.8 million centre that Labor promised them before the 2022 federal election for their early learning centre? Does he think that's fair? Does the member think that it's fair that in Tumby Bay there is no access to ECE for families and many mothers cannot even return to work? Does the member think that it's fair that families in the electorate of Casey are waiting years before they can get their children into early learning, with 15 children for every place? Does the member think that it's fair that in Mallee, in the great electorates of Mallee and the great electorate of Grey, that there are childcare deserts as far as the eye can see, and yet this government is doing nothing for those communities? Nothing for those communities in Grey, nothing for those communities in Braddon, and nothing for those communities in Casey, just to name a few. I'm sure if the member for Robertson took a look at his own backyard, in his own electorate, he'd find there are families struggling to access care, and those families are languishing on long wait lists, and they simply can't go back to work. So tell me exactly what is fair about that, those members opposite. Why is it that this government always leaves the regions behind? Why do they do that? I've sat at round tables with parents in tears. They're concerned about the rising cost of living under this government, and they can't return to work because there is no childcare centres in their area. Or if there is, it's a 40-kilometre trek away and they're stuck on a waiting list. I've spoken to firefighters, nurses, teachers who cannot go back to work amid staffing shortages because there's nowhere for their children to go, nowhere under this government. How is that fair? And then finally, when these children make it to school, they're developmentally behind in their peers because they haven't had the same level of access because of where they live. And this government has the gall to stand here and talk about how families are better off under them. Go to the regions and say that. Visit Tumby Bay. Visit Ardrossan. Visit those South Australian regions who are missing out and tell those families that it's fair. And you say a family who has access to a place is one of the lucky ones, and yet on July 1, 2023, that family and those families watched their increased subsidy eaten away by higher fees from their provider. But the government says that's not true. They say that families are better off. And I've spoken to many who simply aren't. Families who watched their fees increase by 15 to 20% and couldn't do anything about it because there was no other places available for their children in nearby centres. Even data from the Parenthood shows that 90% of parents watched their fees increase on July the 1st, and this government has done nothing about it. They threw billions of taxpayer dollars into the inflation dumpster fire, and then they walked away. They simply said it and they forget it. That's right. Out-of-pocket costs are already creeping back up, 3.5% according to December quarter CPI. Now, and fees will continue to increase because centres also need to pay for rising costs of electricity, rising costs of gas, rising costs of groceries and all items that continue to rise because of the reckless spending of this Labor government. A government who can't protect the borders, a government who can't protect our community, a government who has let the economy spiral out of control because they don't understand the more you spend, the higher inflation soars. It's clear the Albanese government has no idea what they're doing. They're falling over themselves, trying to cover all the mistakes, which is quite a list for only 18 months in government, saying that there's nothing to see here. Australian families deserve better than this reckless Labor government.
I thank the honourable member for Montclair.